Speaking
Okay,
of,
we're live.
it's now 6:31 according to my computer and my watch. It's time to call the Wenham Board of Selectmen to order. So that's what I'm doing, calling it to order.
Thank you. So,
Catherine?
second,
Yes.
We have a couple announcements. Anthony's provided me these. We're lighting up Town Hall in green each night this week for Children's Mental Health Week from Sunday, May 3rd. By the way, did Anthony send around these green photos for you and Catherine and John?
okay, thank you for saying this, because the other night when I went by Town Hall, I saw the green lights on the front of the building, and I could not figure out why, and I was going to send Anthony a note and didn't do that.
Well, I thought it was Halloween early. That's what I thought.
You guys don't spend enough time on the website.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we do, but not in the same website. Anyway,
Well, the town website.
I was aware of this.
Thank you, Catherine.
Gave me a preview last week about the green. And I thought, oh my gosh. Anyway, so we're doing it. Visit our town website for more information, including resources for families in helping support the mental health of our children during COVID-19 crisis.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's the first announcement. And the second one is simple recycling pink bag collection resumes. Surprised they're able to do that in this COVID-19 thing. But anyway, as of yesterday, simple recycling pink bag collection returned to the regular schedule in Wenham. Visit simple, I'm going to spell it out, SIMPLERE cycling.com for full accepted items to request pink bags, or notify us of missing pickup. So I was surprised we were able to do that. Mary Jane, shut that off, Mary Jane. I can't have that back. Mary Jane? I got echo behind me here. Okay. At least muted.
Jack, if I might pipe in here in support, the pink bags are incredibly wonderful to have. I have encouraged so many people, if you don't have them, let me know. I'll be glad to give you some of mine. But either way, that pink bag collection situation works well for the town.
I think it's a wonderful thing. I was just surprised it was resumed with this COVID-19, COVID crisis. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like there'd be a lot of handling of that stuff, but they must have a system.
Yeah, they must have a system. Okay, now we are going to next item, town administrator reports. You can go first. Anthony, I'll follow you.
Okay, thanks, Jack. So just once again, I want to thank the department heads for putting together their updates, which are included in your packet. I know that they put a lot of work into that, and also Nikki for really pulling that together. If anybody has any questions, doesn't have to be tonight, it can be later at any point in time, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to provide the answers. If not, get you the answers. That's it.
Good job to the department heads as usual. That's all I have.
Anything else, Anthony?
No, I can think of. Am I missing something?
I don't know. You're a town administrator. Well, anyway, I tried to get on this 4 o'clock soiree with the Hamilton Board of Selectmen, the town, the school committee, and ourselves, and we each had a private a number to access, which didn't work apparently. Anyway, so I guess the take is that the state is looking to experience a significant downturn in their receipts, which will trickle down to us on the order of, I wasn't there for the full meeting, but I'm told it was 20%. Is that right?
Brad, yeah, suggested 20% across the board reduction in revenues from the state.
Yeah, that would affect the town and the school committee, so that the schools.
Right.
So we're going to be thinking about that in the next few days about how we want to encourage the FinCom to restructure our budgets and as well as ours in terms of expecting a diminished amount from the state on that order, which is, that's a lot of money.
It is, and I think the FinCom, well, at that meeting, I suggested that we had to work closely with the schools because obviously it's what they lose is directly filters down to us. And I think the FinCom is probably, we all have to work together. I think they're looking for a little bit of direction. So got to do some brainstorming, I think, based on what, at least I think we heard tonight.
Right, I think, well, it's up to schools to take the first cut at this, so they know we're gonna have a reduced resources of 20%. That's what we were told today, and that I think that we can help the FinCom, but the FinCom has to engage with the school committee to decide what, if any, the revised budget will be. You know, I can't tell them what to do, so.
One thing that they, if we're going to talk for a second about that meeting, one takeaway I got from that relative to budgeting was that there was a lot of contemplation that this year, given the time constraints and everything else, that there would be a single budget presented to the governor, sort of a House/Senate budget, rather than a budget going through the House and then going through the Senate and then the Ways and Means. That they were going to, both houses were going to work together to come up with whatever, a budget, a 1/12 budget, a quarterly budget, they didn't know what, but I thought that was an interesting approach to at least, I guess, speed things up and get to some kind of consensus.
It would be unique.
Mm.
In the end of the day, they all come to the same conclusion.
Right.
If that
Takes a while.
gets reconciled between the House and the Senate, and the Baker might veto one or two or three, a half a dozen items, but eventually gets passed. Anyway, it's going to be a totally different year.
Yep.
So
Mr. Chair, might I pipe in at this point?
you certainly can, Mr. Selectman, Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
So I'm,
All right. First of all, I want to bring top priority to our first responders, our fire, police, and ambulance. They have been doing a spectacular job responding to the calls that they have. And I can't begin to tell you how concerned I am for their well-being and the well-being of their families who they come home to afterwards. Now, let's go to Bruce and Brad. I listened to that conversation with the school committee, et cetera, and it was phenomenally insightful. Bruce and Brad were very reserved in their responses, and it's what they didn't say that was concerning to me. I think we have a 5 to 10 year turnaround of how serious this situation is. And I think we need to be very cognizant and very concerned about what our budget looks like, not this current year, but the ongoing 3 to 5 years, and figure out where we can be very conservative and cut back where we need to, so that we can still provide the services that our town needs to have. At the same time, be aware that we've got voters and folks in town who may not be able to meet the needs of payment of their property taxes.
very disconcerting and concerning.
That's right.
Anything else you want to share with us before I make a couple of remarks?
Please go ahead and do that, and maybe I'll pipe in.
I'm all set.
I was talking to Anthony, John, not you. You have anything else to say, John, before I turn it over to Anthony again?
I'm all set for the moment.
Anthony? Anything else?
No, I think that's it. I did have an opportunity to meet with the library trustees, talking about the library and what it looks like for the rest of this fiscal year. I think further discussions with Hamilton may be warranted, and to review, how we move forward. So I think there'll be more of an opportunity to discuss that another time. and we'll continue to look at some options that can be available.
I'd like to be more specific. I understand you and Joe D., the town manager of Hamilton, attended the recent library board of trustee meeting, and that there was no conclusions reached. Just a reminder that we are in charge of the managerially of the library, and they're in charge of the joint rec. And that since they constitute roughly two-thirds of the expenses of both of these programs are borne by the town of Hamilton, I think it's inappropriate for the town of Wenham to do anything unilaterally without the full support of the town of Hamilton. And right now, there's no consensus, either the joint rec or the library, of what anything we jointly need to do. So we're waiting for the town of Hamilton to make a recommendation to us about both programs. If they do, they do. They don't, they don't. Anyway, the ball's in their court. And that for us to discuss further. We haven't decided anything on that, but we have library's been closed since mid-March. They have 9 full-time people, 2 part-time people, and they are doing, as the report indicates that Anthony shared with us tonight, they are doing some work. Whether that justifies 11 people is questionable, but nevertheless, I'm not going to recommend either as Anthony any action without some support or at least leadership from the town of Hamilton. So, and the town of Hamilton has expressed a desire to have a joint meeting with us, Board of Selectmen, last 2 weeks. My retort to Anthony is, fine, what's the agenda? I think it has to be more than, hi guys, how's it going? So that, we don't need one of those again. So that if they come up with a meaningful agenda that we can actually, with substance, we could talk about, I would be all for that, but I haven't seen anything from the town of Hamilton that suggests we have a meaningful agenda forthcoming. If and when we do, I'll share it with the Board of Selectmen and we can have a joint meeting. But right now, there's nothing on the table for that.
And Jack, I think relative to the library, it would be useful to have a discussion amongst our board on an agenda before we meet jointly with Hamilton, because otherwise that turns into a little bit of mayhem. Could turn into a little bit of mayhem. So I agree with you. Let's wait till we have something meaningful to talk about.
Right. I mean, that if they're bearing 2/3 of the cost, that even though it's our managerial responsibility, it's the majority of the costs are being borne by the town of Hamilton. If they think the way we shouldn't make any changes, then I don't think that it's our call to make changes.
Well, I agree, but I guess I think our board should talk about it, since I'm a little bit in the dark about what changes we could or are contemplating. So, that's fine, but we should have it on our agenda. So before
No,
we,
I don't have anything on my agenda. I'm just saying
no,
that
for the future. Saying for
there's
the
11 people, 9 full-time, and it's closed. That seems like a lot of people for a closed library. That's my point.
Got it.
Okay.
So if I might speak to both you, Catherine, and Jack, about this, you're both on the same, I believe, on the same page. Jack, yes, we need to look at this as a broad picture point of view, but at the same time, Catherine, we need to look at the detail, and the director should be advising us what they can be cut and trimmed up, so that we don't have unnecessary pain. At the same time, we trim up what we can trim up.
Anyway, more to come. Maybe not. Maybe this is the last thing I want to say about the library. But anyway, that I've given you the best that Anthony and I are aware of from the town of Hamilton, and both Anthony and Joe D., I'll call him, attended the library meeting. I think it was yesterday. Anthony, is that correct?
Monday.
Monday.
Yeah, what's today? Yes.
That was yesterday.
Okay. It's all blending into one long day.
I'll just day.
Now for the most lengthy agenda we have. It's on to Catherine for the consent agenda, which is normally short, but not tonight.
Okay, is it mine? It says John, but I'll do it. So these,
No, my consent agenda says 640 CH, Catherine Harrison.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
on the
right.
agenda it does, but in the
You're on,
packet-
Catherine.
in the packet it says
It's okay.
You can't get out of this.
It's fine, just fine. So this agenda is appropriate for me to do. It has completely to do with minutes. I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the following items in the consent agenda. Approve the open session meeting minutes of January 21, 2020 and January 29, 2020 joint budget meeting with all boards. And also I move that the Selectmen vote to release the previously approved executive session meeting minutes of March 15th, 2016, August 23rd, 2016, September 20th, 2016, January 16, 2018, number 1, July 24th, 2018, August 21, 2018, September 25, 2018, October 23rd, 2018, November 27th, 2018, December 4th, 2018, December 11th, 2018, January 8th, 2019, January 15th, 2019, January 22nd, 2019, number 1, January 22nd, 2019, number 2, March 5th, 2019, and finally, March 26th, 2019.
Sure you got them all?
I hope so.
A little explanation is in order. One of the 3 responsibilities of the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and not the major one, is to go back over executive session minutes that might have been approved but not released to the public.
Hmm.
I did that with Nikki this week, which is why Catherine is rattling off all these meetings. I was surprised some of these went back to 2016.
Yeah.
And so my predecessor, the chairman of the board, must have dropped the ball like I did a little bit. I wonder who that was, but
Couple of predecessors if they were 2016. But good job, Jack. Good job for catching all of this. And Nikki too.
so yeah, so we went through each one, and there's only very, very few that are left. There's a couple of legal issues with Maple Woods and a couple of lawsuits pending. And we had executive session minutes about those. That's about it, I think, it's my recall anyway, from what we're holding back until these lawsuits are resolved. Turtle Hill, the other is Maple Woods, and I think I believe it might be one other item in there. But anyway, we've cleaned up most of the stuff.
So you want to hold on those?
Well, they're not here. Catherine hasn't read them off, so they're not here. So I'm saying one of the criteria is there's still an ongoing litigation or ongoing issues that would prevent us or preclude us from issuing the executive minutes of these meetings relative to those 2 subjects and one other that would be inappropriate to release at this point. So we don't have, the next time we release these, it's not going to be a long list like this. It wouldn't go back to 2016, for example. Anyway.
So everything on this list is ready to be released. All the executive session that I've listed are ready to be released.
Yeah, so I'll second that. All in favor?
Catherine, yes.
John, yes.
Jack Wilhelm, yes. Thank you. Okay. Update from our public health nurse. Hello there, Mary Beth.
Good evening, everybody.
Where is that young lady?
She's 3. She's right.
Depending on your view, where I am, I don't know.
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay, well, good to be heard.
Okay.
I will just update you all that the case count in Wenham continues to slowly but steadily rise. We have had 14 people infected with COVID-19 in our community. Of those, most of them have recovered well. In terms of daily management, I participate in meetings on Monday, Wednesday, Friday with our town administrator and our public safety, our fire and police. And we have established some clear communication. So for instance, when there is an individual who is infected that we're aware of, I communicate not the name of the individual, but the address, so that police and fire are safe when they are responding to a call at that address. They know that that is a call that they need to use full personal protective equipment to keep themselves safe. And I would say that I think that communication pattern has been working very smoothly in terms of notifying fire and police of addresses that they need to be aware of, and then removing those addresses from concern when affected individuals have left isolation. So we have very good and clear lines of communication. We did have communication over the weekend, which was very successful for both police, fire, and myself. So we continue to have very good working relationships one with another to address the health and safety needs of our community. Jackie, Nikki, and I continue to work on updating the town COVID webpage on Mondays and Thursdays each week to reflect changes in guidance. I was on a number of calls with the state today, and guidance continues to change. So, just a small example of a change we were informed of today with guidance from the CDC and the State Department of Public Health. Individuals who had tested positive, say for COVID-19, who had no symptoms, used to be guidance about isolation for 7 days. Now it's up to 10 across the board. And other sorts of details about how we're managing the disease continue to change as we develop more science. And so staying abreast of all those changes is a big job, and one that we take very seriously, so that we are giving the appropriate information to all members of our community. So I will update that. I'm sure you're all aware, but I will just say, since I know that this is recorded, that the governor put out an executive order requiring face coverings in both outdoor and indoor public spaces if there is an anticipation, that a reasonable anticipation, that the physical distancing of 6 feet cannot be maintained. So what that means for members of our public, that goes along fairly well with the Board of Health order already, that if individuals are entering essential businesses, that they should be covered. The extension would be if you are out in public, and we've talked about this in many forums, but if you're out in public and you anticipate that you are not able to be 6 feet away from someone else you would encounter, that you should have a face covering over your nose and mouth. And the reason for that, the rationale that we're asking people to do this, you may have heard the phrase sustained community transmission we have in Massachusetts. So what that means is there are people who may not have any symptoms whatsoever of COVID-19 who are capable of sharing the virus with other individuals. So when we all wear our face coverings when we're out in public, that is our service to our neighbors of protecting them in the event that we might be infected and not know it. So those are the current changes, and up to date. We're all waiting to hear more from the governor later this month. And that's my update for tonight, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
John or Catherine, do you have any questions of Mary Beth?
I do have one. Thank you, Mary Beth, for the update, and also for all that you're doing and other folks are doing in public health. But my question is, so we report, or it is reported, the number of confirmed cases, and you made the comment, thankfully, that most of our confirmed cases have recovered well. Is there any anticipation or any reporting of actual recovered cases? So I think we report confirmed cases, but that's a cumulative number. We don't know how many of those people have recovered or out of isolation or whatever. Is there any contemplation to report that number?
We have not had a discussion as either the Board of Health or the public safety team about how we will go about reporting. And if you were to look at how the state reports, we are in line generally with how the state is reporting.
Yes.
Other surrounding communities choose to report differently. I have in many updates reported individuals who have recovered, and for us right now, that's 13 out of 14. So certainly I would say if there's an interest or a desire for different types of reporting, I would suggest that that be forwarded to, I would assume that would be the Board of Health for consideration, or maybe the town administrator. I'm not sure who should field that.
Okay, thank you.
John, do you have any questions? John Clemency?
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I'm all set at the moment. Thank you. And
Okay.
thank you very much, Mary Beth, for your incredible devotion to what we need to deal with here.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
comments. You'll be on here for a short presentation for the next several weeks, I think, probably next several months. So now we go on to discussion potential vote for annual town meeting warrant articles. Well, this was put on the agenda, but I think that reviewing the legislation that either Brad Hill or Bruce Tarr has forwarded to us today might have been discussed at this meeting that I had truncated about changes to the requirements for the town meeting, both in terms of venue as well as in terms of participation. In our town, for example, we have a requirement of 120 registered voters attending the meeting. There's legislation that would reduce that to as low as 10% of the requirement. I think it was the town of Swampscott and Marblehead, I guess it was, that didn't like just prior to legislation, didn't like that. I went to Superior Court and had their attendance reduced to, again, 10% of the required threshold. So when we can have it, it's going to depend a lot on the social distancing directives from Governor Baker, whether there's relief in terms of the required number of participants at our town meeting. As I mentioned at the last meeting of this Board of Selectmen meeting, that we had a very hard time last year on a very nice day in April of coming up with the required number of participants. It took 38 minutes, I believe, for us to actually, with a lot of telephone calls, a lot of people to their neighbors and friends, that we eventually had the minimum requirement, at least initially we did anyway. And with this COVID-19, I think the odds of us getting 120 people, even if we could have a meeting tomorrow, like nil, and that regardless of the weather, whether it's raining or sunshine. So that we're going to have to, I think, wait until to see what legislative changes are made to make annual town meeting possible. We could be looking at something not till the fall, September or October. I don't know. But it's difficult to talk about whether we have warrant articles now, and as I did the last time, bifurcating the meeting with a certain half a dozen warrant articles that might take no more than 40 minutes, mostly the Article 1, which is our funding for the town. The rest of these are kind of perfunctory. I think that that was my idea a couple of weeks ago, but I think that's by the boards now, and that whether it's a good idea or not, I don't think we're without some guidance and changes from the legislature with Charlie Baker's signature, or a total relaxation of the social distancing, which I don't think is going to happen for many, many months. I don't see how we can plan on an annual town meeting realistically. So I'll open up to comments, my two fellow selectmen, beginning with John.
Thank you, Jack. All right. I listened intensively to the conversations that took place between Brad Hill, Bruce Tarr, and the school committee, etc. My response to your points specifically are that I think we need to very seriously consider our local voting registration and response to that voting. As well, we need to think about our town budget, and our finance committee needs to seriously review what's going on with our town budget and give us advice as to what they would like to see happen and how they see all of this play out. And it's critically important that we don't move too quickly, but at the same time, we have no choice but to make decisions.
Catherine?
Yeah, I think that John's earlier point that what Bruce and Brad did not say was as informative as what they did say. So much is still incomplete. The legislation that they presently have that you talked about, Jack, that would allow us to reduce the quorum, is through the Senate, but not even on the on the radar, not going to be acted on by the House anytime soon. And Bruce commented that there's likely to be further legislation that could address some of the additional needs of the towns relative to elections and town meetings. And they had actually no idea when they were going to even have a budget for the state. And, relative to the quorum, even if we, to your point, Jack, even if we did reduce it to 10%, and actually for clarification, I don't think last year was the year we had a problem. I think it was several years ago, but even if we could reduce it to 10% or 12, that's more than Governor Baker's, present limit of 10. So I think you're right. I just think there are too many things changing right now. We could start thinking about scenario planning, from a budgetary point of view and other points of view. But I think they were also very clear to say that May 18th, although that we should all be aware, I think this was Bruce that said we should be quite aware, the governor said today, that that's the date that the report is due from the Lieutenant Governor's committee, but that we shouldn't be assumed that that's the date that, anything's going to change dramatically. So I think you're right. I think a few weeks could make a big difference here just in how much we know or how much we understand, but there's election legislation, town meeting legislation, quorum legislation, all of these things that are sort of in the pipeline, and we don't know. So I agree.
And if I might, Mr. Chairman, Catherine, I fully understand what you're saying. We need to be cognizant not only how effective all of this is from the state level, but we need to make decisions on the local level. And we need to take direction from ourselves and make decisions that have both voting and budgetary effect. And if we're going to sit here and wait for the governor and the legislature to make decisions for us, I think that's a wrong direction to go.
Well, John, I think we're talking about the town annual town meeting, and you kind of agenda items at town elections. We'll get to that in the town elections in a moment. That's the last agenda.
Yeah, but I'm talking about both. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. So I think that we can't plan in a vacuum for the annual town meeting, and then we're going to have guidance from the state, a lot of guidance from the state of what's permissible and what isn't. And right now, that whether that's a month from now or 5 months from now, who knows? But it's not productive, I think, to talk about what we're going to do when we don't know what the rules are, and that we're going to have to wait to find out what the rules are.
That's right. We've got bills to pay and obligations to meet, and we can't just sit here. So this is a business. I don't care how you slice it. It's a business. It's not municipal anymore. This is a business, and we have to meet our obligations. And that means that we have to make decisions at a local level. And if the governor doesn't agree with us, too bad.
Well, John, I don't think you're not suggesting that we act outside of the law, are you? Sorry.
No, John, Catherine, let me answer that. So, John, there's two things really here. Certainly. I think we need to understand what the present law is if we don't have an annual town meeting budget passed by June 30th. I believe we're back to some kind of a 1/12 thing. And I think
that I understand. Okay.
So I don't quite understand that. I want to know a lot more about that. So I'm going to ask at our next meeting to describe if nothing changes legislatively, what would happen on July 1st in terms of what we're authorized to spend. I think it's 1/12 of this current year's budget, but I'd like to have a little more definitive information on that. Secondly, I think we need to go back, as you were making comments 10 minutes ago, that we know the present fiscal 2021 budget was predicated upon a more or less business as usual basis. we now know, based on what we learned today, you all learned today, and we're hearing anyway, that it's not going to be business as usual next year in terms of the receipts coming in, certainly from the state. And so we're going to have to go back and look at, again, our budgets for fiscal 21, presumably lockstep with the finance committee, because they're in charge of presenting the ultimate budget to the town when we eventually have a town meeting. But we also need to be hopefully in step with them. So we need to be in preparation for how we're going to re-review the budget with some different assumptions about revenue sources, I think, and that. But I think that's about all we can do right now. And now I'll turn it over to Catherine.
Well, I agree with you, Jack. I think, and I do think we may have to come up with some scenarios specifically for the budget with some assumptions based on what we know. But other than that, I agree.
Okay, so next agenda item, and our last agenda item, is a discussion of potential vote for annual town elections. Now, the annual town election is a little different than the annual town meeting. First of all, there's no quorum requirements for that, and that the elections in terms of applicants for various elected positions, that's been closed out weeks ago, if not months ago, I think in early March. We have many committees that, many boards, Board of Assessors, Board of Selectmen, Library Trustees, Regional School District, Planning Board, Housing Authority, Moderator, Water Commissioners, et cetera, that are all elected people. And that I think we could have elections. And I'm proposing we do have town elections. And here's what I'm proposing. And that I think that based upon even a small relaxation in the social distancing rules and guidance from the state, our selectmen's room, where we historically have had the elections, is not big enough to effectively have social distancing. Possible, I think, but I think it's not quite practical. And I think that might scare some people away from even participating if we had elections. I'm making this up next week, which I'm not proposing. I will in a minute, not next week though. And that, so I think we need a change of venue. I've been working with, asking our town clerk, who's the chief election registrar. She's on somewhere here, I hope, right? I don't see her. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, she's there.
Yeah, okay, good. I see you waving, got it. So what could we do in that, I think that one, the venue that comes to mind, still in Wenham, not in another town. I think there was Swampscott or Marble or somebody managed to get a court to allow the election to be held in another town. So it's basically the Buca Gymnasium at the Bessie Buca School, where we have our annual town meeting, is huge. We could easily set up 3 election booths and have extensive social distancing from people coming in, people monitoring the process, a couple of policemen there. I think they have one at least, making sure everything is kosher. I don't think there's generally any fist fights ever break out in these elections. But anyway, there's a policeman there. And I think there's a distance you have to, can't be holding banners up outside of the election thing. And so I think this, we can easily, I think, have elections at the Buca School. I think the Buca School would be amenable to doing that. There are rules about this. We'd have to notify the town 20 days in advance of the election that there's a change in venue and here is the date, type thing like that. And that would have to be written notifications. Diane knows all the rules, and that she informed me of these rules this week. And that what I'm proposing is that we actually set a date subject to change, meaning cancellation, as opposed to that if something different happens that would prevent us or preclude us from doing this, we could always cancel it. But right now, I'm proposing that we have town elections on Thursday, June 4th, 2020, at the Bessie Bucher Auditorium. And before I turn it over to Catherine and John for discussion, I'm going to read the motion I have in front of me, which I wrote with Diane's help. Move that the annual town election for 2020 be held at the Bucher School Gymnasium due to the coronavirus social distancing regulations, so forth. And so that, we'd have to get this out by roughly May 15th or something to comply with the 20 days. But if we approve this tonight, we have the 20 days is easily attainable. And again, something can happen next week. Governor Baker saying that, guess what? These social distancing rules are going to be even more strict than they are right now. Who knows? I don't know. Or you could say, okay, one of my neighbors pointed out to me on a walk I had the other day that there's only 3 states in the country that don't allow golf courses to be open. He's very concerned about that. I won't mention his name. What Massachusetts is one of them. So it could be a liberalization or a modification of the social distancing. But I think even with the current social distancing guidelines right now, pardon me, we'd easily have elections and at least get that done with. And that again, there's a lot of absentee ballots. I think that Diane, can you hear us? How many absentee ballots do we already have for the election and in your hand?
157.
Wow. We already have 157 people have already voted for this and that voted whatever.
No, they've been sent ballots. They requested ballots. So that's about 37% of the people that probably will vote anyway.
That's a lot. So that so they don't have to come. So the ballot questions are on there as well, but one of them is override issues, both the town and the regional school district. As everyone knows that if it doesn't pass at town meeting, that eventually when we have a town meeting that or passes or doesn't pass, that the ballot question is moot. So I'm going to make this up. I'll use it for the town of the regional school district. If we left our town override as it is, which I hope we don't, but let's say we did, for discussion, 360,000 and change, and it didn't pass at town meeting, then anyone who voted in the ballot or in absentee ballots for or against it would be moot. So that just similarly for the regional school district, anything we vote that doesn't pass town meeting has to pass the ballot, and that there's another couple of items on there anyway for the overrides. A fire truck and the school has another override issue. So anyway, it's moot. I'm trying to.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I'm willing to second your motion, but I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. That is that we, the town of Wenham, are willing to put forth a voting priority to the local elections and change the dynamics of what we've done in the past, and do that what's the dating on this?
Thursday, June 4th, I'm proposing.
Thursday, June 4th.
That was my motion too.
Okay. And that would help resolve the local election issue.
That's all.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So whoever is on the ballot for those local elections would either yay or nay prevail.
People on the ballot can't be changed at this point. It's long since time to either apply for a position or withdraw from a position. So the name is not going to change whenever we have it.
But if there's overrides adjunct to the voting process, they become mute.
They become moot if they're not passed at town meeting when we eventually have a town meeting.
Correct. Okay. So
that could be who knows when, or I don't know.
Well, that's one of the biggest concerns I have is that a town meeting we can possibly get passed because we can divide by 12. But a voting, it's very concerning to me to renege the voting rights of people. And we've already done that through the process of not having voting so far. So I think we ought to be cognizant of that.
Well, I'm just trying to move one of the balls forward here, and that,
Mhm.
uh,
So I'm supportive of your recommendation.
Catherine, your turn.
Okay. So this is always a very awkward conversation for me, because I think everyone knows that I'm on the ballot or not on the ballot. And so that as soon as there's an election, I will no longer be a selectman. And I think there are some people who believe that I will voice the opinion I'm about to voice because for some reason I want to stay in this position longer than I am. But I think there are several things about that concern me. Number one, relative to, I get the idea of, well, let's just get something done. But to John's point, the town of Wenham, has not restricted any voting due to some scurrious reason. There's a pandemic. That's why we haven't had an election. Number two, there's only one contested race on that ballot, and it is for school committee. And that brings me up to my second point, that I've not heard anything. We keep hearing that we want to be in sync with Hamilton, and the last date that we talked about with Hamilton for an election was somewhere around June 25th. So if we're not in sync with them, then having our election on June 4th and theirs on June 25th means that we have no school committee election results until they're both in. So I don't see the point in that. And the third thing is that the idea that we not only have a town override, which we don't know yet whether will be on there, but there's a school override that we really don't know whether there will be one or whether it will be different. To send out ballots and to vote on that without a town meeting, I think, or without some significant amount of communication about what's happening, I think leads to a lot of confusion and potentially some unintended consequences. I also think that what we heard from council, and again, I would like this in writing before we take any votes, but what we heard from council is that the town meeting vote for an override and the election vote for an override are not, one doesn't preclude the other. They do two different things. So if an override passed on an election, I believe we will have increased our levy limit to whatever that number is. Whether the town meeting chooses to appropriate money to that levy limit is a different situation. So I don't exactly understand why we would diverge from meeting or voting at the same time as Hamilton, especially since we're really not affecting a lot of people. And there are a lot of compelling reasons to, just give it a little bit longer. So I'm, happy to be a 1 versus 2 once again, but I think you guys should think very carefully about in one evening making this decision. And I don't think we've had I have not heard of any conversations with Hamilton. And I think we're wise to, especially considering the school committee, at least if no other reason, jointly decide to have an election on the same day.
All right. To your concern, Catherine, John Clemency, regarding the difference of the vote for the town administrator, the town votes for the school committee, those can be sequestered.
Yes, but what's the point of having ours sooner if is it
going to change anything?
No, yeah, well, the only vote that's contested is the school committee. So those are the people who are have the most vested interest in understanding the results.
Mm-hmm.
And they won't until the 25th, unless Hamilton changes, until the 25th of June.
Well, I guess sort of say to my point, is it going to change anybody's vote? So I think that's fait accompli one way or the other. The other is we need to keep moving our towns forward. And the town of Wenham is my primary concern. And we have a number of positions that need to be decided on so that we can move forward and make decisions with the people who are going to be on these committees or commissions long term, and avoid conflict of interest or conflict period, making decisions for people who don't have the opportunity to step up to the plate.
So I'm going to get very personal now, and I have nothing to
Sure.
lose. So there's two ways to look at that. There's
Mhm.
one way, and I guess there's a part of me that thinks this. There's one way to say that there's a lot of merit to having some stability in the team of people who are sort of managerially in charge of this process, including the budgeting,
Mm.
as that the stability of that team is as important, and the experience of I have been involved in this since day one.
Mhm.
So there's some merit, maybe more merit to that than allowing or voting in someone else. And I have a lot of respect for that person, but the next person is coming in to this position, and I think probably the planning board, who've been following things, but who don't have the depth of knowledge or experience. So there's a pro and a con from that point of view in either way.
Mhm.
And again, we'd be better served by spending the time planning for how we're going to budget and how we're going to get through especially the first quarter of FY.
I don't for 1 minute disagree with how severe the financial situation is for the town of Wenham. I don't for 1 minute. I went through this back in 89, 90, and it was just horrible. And we did what we had to do to get through it. This is even worse.
Absolutely.
Okay? But we should not be, as a board, making decisions for someone who may not be capable or who is going to have to deal with the results of our decision making.
Well, that's true of the school committee as well.
That's right.
Again, I have said enough on this. I am perfectly
Okay.
happy to fade into the background unless,
Okay.
if I just do not understand why we feel like we have to rush this without even having a discussion with
Because we
the
have a
town of Hamilton.
governor who can't make a decision and keeps moving the goalpost. That's my personal
You and I
opinion.
will, yeah, okay. We'll have
Okay.
to disagree on.
It is
we
my
need to disagree on
opinion.
that.
We can't keep moving the goalpost and think we're ever going to hit it. So it's very concerning to me that the town of Wenham is going to suffer the consequences of jurisdiction that comes from above.
Okay, well, I can't even begin to argue with that on John's, with you on that, John, so I
Mhm.
won't.
Okay.
I have
That's
three.
okay.
I have three concluding comments and actually four. So I want to address, Catherine, your comment on legal. We do have a legal opinion. Hopefully, Anthony would have shared this with you already from legal counsel about the 2012 annual town meeting about having.
Yeah.
I
I have that. I have that. That wasn't my concern, but yeah, I have that.
Well, you brought up a legal issue. I'm addressing that with you now.
But that I was discussing a different legal issue.
Oh, I don't know what that is. So that in terms of there might be some people who don't quite feel like you, who can't wait to get off these boards, and that they want to retire and they don't want to serve anymore, and that I don't know who they are, and I haven't taken a
Well,
poll.
it's me and Don Killam. So we do know who they are. Those are the
Well,
only two people that would be getting off
yeah.
of boards in town. And I've been ready for a while.
Yeah. So the last comment's rushing this. So we don't know you know, I'm becoming more and more pessimistic about when we can have an annual town meeting and then dates. And that maybe we'll learn something next couple of weeks from Governor Baker. I don't know. I've been reading the paper like you have, but other towns, I haven't heard anybody scheduling a town meeting anytime in the near future, and that we may not have a town meeting till September, October, November next year. It's a long time to go to coordinate an annual town election with an annual town meeting. And so my last comment is that I'm gonna call for a vote in a second, and that, but I will put, since you may not have any time to think about this much. Who's that? Anyway.
Diane Bucco. So, do you have your hand raised?
No,
I
So,
do.
Jack, Diane Bucco has her hand raised.
Okay, Diane?
So I have a couple things that I just wanted to throw out to you all. Talking about just elections. So elections has not been brought up to the legislature. There is nothing going on that they're going to extend that.
yes,
So
there is,
thinking-
Diane. They said it tonight. There is.
He did, but it's not. No, it's not. But
Okay.
there are things you need to think about as far as an election. Besides just the date. In this environment, we need to change our polling location. So I would ask that we take a vote perhaps to move our voting location to the Bucher School, because that does need your authorization. And from there, we can be ready whenever we decide on a date. A polling location does not follow underneath the social,
Distancing.
the 10 people. A polling place is not included, and you can have more than 10 people in a location as long as they're 6 feet apart, which I feel we can accomplish at an election at the Bucher. All the other communities in our area do have things scheduled. Everyone has their town meeting and their town election scheduled. Everyone is way back at the end of June. June 22nd, June 25th, June 15th, etc. So having a date and planning for one, I would recommend doing that for both. If it needs to get canceled at another time, then we cancel it if things change. But my recommendation would be to stick with the dates that Hamilton and Wenham had talked about. June 20th for the town meeting, June 25th for the election, taking a vote that we would have the election at Bucher. And my last comment was that at the town meeting, you would just do the essential budget things, whether it's legislation or not. So those were my comments. I raised my hand. I put my hand down now.
Dr. King, I need to finish this thing with ask some comments a minute ago. I had a fourth item I was going to write down. I'm going to call for a vote anyway in a minute, and that. But I'm going to also suggest that we put this item on the agenda again for next Tuesday night for reconsideration. So, Kathy, you had a few comments and some criticisms and so forth. I have some more. And other people might want to weigh in on whether or not we would have a. We're all talking about the month of June. So I think the odds of us, Diane, by the way, having a annual town meeting June 20th are extremely optimistic, and that particularly since unless the legislature comes up with a relief for the number of people required for us to vote, and I believe, is it 120? Am I correct, Diane?
Yes.
Okay. So I can't believe we're going to have 120 people show up anytime until this COVID-19 thing is totally resolved. So I'm going to call for a vote, and then I'm going to put it on the agenda again next week. Dr. Ting will get back to you in a minute after we have this vote. But I will be looking in the next week to find out, the school committee regional school district can opine as well. And that I'm just trying to move something along that we can control, which we can control the votes. We can't control the annual town meeting for lots of reasons, which we've already discussed. So I've already moved. John, anybody, do we have a second?
All right, could you repeat the motion, please?
Yep, I'll repeat the motion, John. Move that the Wenham annual town election for 2020 be held at the Bucher School, by the way, which Diane is recommending, gymnasium, due to the concerns about the social distancing rules with coronavirus.
I would second the motion.
Was there a date in that motion?
June
Or are we
4th.
just moving June 4th
Oh,
definitely, or June
It's been
4th?
seconded and
Oh,
debated.
no, I'm going to answer,
now.
Catherine. June 4th, Catherine, I'm sorry.
Okay, and when you originally discussed it, you talked about, as we have voted before, with the possibility of the necessity for needing to change it based on, circumstances at the time. Is that
Absolutely.
still part of your motion?
I'll make it part of my motion,
Okay.
yes, because, yeah, I mean, nothing may change the next week, but something could change 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now, which means that there's compelling evidence why we should not have it on June 4th, and that who knows, and that there could be some legislative relief or not, and that if we don't have it on the books right now, we won't be having it on June 4th, and that so. Moved and seconded, and John seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. John?
John, aye.
Catherine?
No,
Okay, passed 2-1. So
And- you're putting it on the agenda next week as well.
I said I'll put it on the agenda for reconsideration next week. So people, you and everybody else can talk about this, come up with reasons for or against it, and we can have another. I think this will probably be the principal item on the agenda, unless we have some interesting information coming from the legislature or Charlie Baker. Who knows? Dr. Ting, you had your hand up.
Wait a minute, you're muted, Dr. Ting, hold on.
All right, thank you for letting me unmute myself. So my issue would be is as long as there, I mean, in terms of the date of when this election occurred, my issue is in terms of making sure that there is a protocol in place to provide safety for the health of the citizens of Wenham. So I'm talking staff to staff safety, staff to citizen, and citizen to citizen safety, meaning whether physical distancing can be maintained. All the areas that potentially could be touched are going to be cleaned in a fashion that is appropriate for decontamination between voters, as well as is there going to be a methodology for screening anyone who's coming into a building to make sure that they potentially don't have active COVID and are bringing it into a building, even with a face mask on by all individuals. Having someone with active COVID is probably not the best thing you want to have. So I think regardless, the Board of Health and working with the public health nurse and public safety would need to figure out how we're going to do that in a way that gets folks into a polling place and out in a fashion that can allow it to occur safely. For example, even surfaces that, the booth would have to wipe down. It's more than just wiping it. You have to wipe it down and let it sit for a period of time before it's considered actually safe for use again. So the timing of this would decrease probably the number of individuals allowed in there. So I just want to make sure we have a process in place that when we have the elections, it's done safely, it's done in a way that follows a process or protocol, and that there's organization and coordination amongst public health, the first responders, and everyone else involved in the polling individuals. So I just want to make sure that we have a discussion to allow that to occur, whatever that date may be. But
I
Dr. Ting,
I think that
John,
makes a lot of good sense,
John,
Doctor.
John, please, John, hold it.
Go ahead, please.
All good points. Why don't you form a committee of yourself and whoever you want to actually address those? And by the way, why don't you include the post office in there too? I go to the post office every day. I don't see them wiping down anything when I go in there, and that they do social distancing, but, that people walk in and walk out, and there's no particularly protocols of that. And I don't think in the polling place, they're going to have many more people than go in the post office between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. in the afternoon.
Yeah, I'll have to speak with the Postmaster General about that. That's, I don't think that, yeah,
I hear your
but I
concern.
understand your point. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'll be looking forward to your recommendations next
Well,
week.
yeah, I mean, so we'll try to come up with something and by next week, because again, it may affect the date that you just posted, if we could, what we need to do, but we'll work hard in trying to figure out something.
Okay, John,
Thank you, Doctor.
John, you have something else to add?
No, I'm all set. Thank you, Jack.
Okay, I think that's it. So we'll have this on the agenda item next week. And that I moved that we adjourn. It's now 7:36.
Second the motion.
Do I hear a second? All in favor? Aye.
John, I.
I think we lost Catherine anyway. All right, meeting is adjourned.